Hello and welcome to the new Aitkin County Soil and Water Conservation District podcast. Our goal is to provide another way for people to get information about the district's priorities and programs and to make the watershed and its issues come alive. Today, we'll be talking to Farm Bill biologist Joe Quehl about the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP, and what this program can do for you. We'll also talk a little bit about the wildlife habitat restoration work that he does with private landowners. Please consider liking and following our page, and we hope that you enjoy the episode. All right. Hi, welcome to the first episode of the new Aitkin County Soil and Water Conservation District podcast. I'm Emil So. I'm the Conservation Corps member at the district right now. Today we're going to talk with Joe Quehl about the EQIP program. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Joe Quehl. I'm a Farm Bill biologist with Pheasants Forever, and I cover Aitkin and Carlton County.
All right.
And so I help landowners in those areas and some of the surrounding areas too.
Awesome. Okay. So tell us about EQIP and why are we talking about it today? Especially?
Yeah. So EQIP is a Farm Bill program. So it's funded through the Farm Bill Act, and it's so the Farm Bill funds many programs, and it's just one of those programs. And so if you know CRP, it's like a similar situation where it's just a different version of that program.
Okay.
And so we're talking about it today, though, is because it has some new funding becoming available. And we just wanted to get the word out about it and hopefully, help some other landowners with it if they want to enroll in it or utilize those funds.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier, spoke to you before, that there's a deadline coming up, right, for that?
Yes. Funding? Yep. So there's a deadline coming up for the funding on September 6th. Okay. So we just need to have applications in by that date, and then we kind of work through it. It's a little bit longer process. So the applications isn't binding in any way. You just have, it's kind of like the government's way of throwing your name in the hat.
Okay.
You're just throwing your name in the hat, and then we work with you throughout the next couple of months to actually plan what you want to do. So you don't really have to have anything set in stone, and you can cancel at any time too, which is nice.
Okay.
So it's not like if you throw your name in the hat, you have to do it or stuff. And it is an application process too. So you're not necessarily guaranteed funds if you apply, but it's just the first step really. Yep.
And I'm kind of new to all this. I don't know all the Farm Bill programs. So
yeah.
Do you mind telling us what the different programs are, just generally, and how they're different from each other, and what sets EQIP apart from the others?
Yeah, totally. So the Farm Bill has a lot of different programs in it, and all of them have the goal of improving or implementing conservation practices in one way or another. And so the little history, the Farm Bill started during the Dust Bowl. And so they got the Farm Bill because a lot of people were just leaving their fields dirt. And then that's what caused the Dust Bowl to happen, is that there was no cover and everyone was farming. So then a lot of air pollution was occurring. So they created the Farm Bill to help incentivize farmers to implement these conservation practices that might not be the most financially viable on your own, or it might be hard to do startup. And so a lot of Farm Bill programs are aimed at those type of situations where, the implementing a cover crop or, fencing off a water feature from your cows might not be the most viable thing for you to do on your own, but we can provide cost share opportunities to help correct that or help you implement those kind of conservation focused practices. So there's a couple different programs. There's a lot of them, but I don't really know them all.
Just the ones that you know.
But so one of the big ones that most people know is CRP, so Conservation Reserve Program, and that's basically a protection program where you can protect your field edges or part of your cropland and turn it into a native prairie.
Okay.
And so that's a pretty common one, and that gets done a lot more in the southern part of the state. Up here, we don't have too much cropland, so we don't do CRP a ton up here. But the EQIP, which is the one we're talking about today, that one is more of a project-based program. So it can help landowners do just about over 200 different types of practice, or 200 different practices. So there's a lot of practices in the program that you can do, but its goal is to help landowners complete projects.
Okay.
So basically, if you want to, like I said, fence off a river from your cows so they're not, polluting the water, we'll help you put in that fence, but then also we can help you put in a water feature so you have water for your cows. But you can also do like wildlife focused projects too, which is what I mainly work with. Where you can do, brush mowing projects to help clean up an area. You can do a pollinator planting. So they're like little projects. And so what you do is you kind of big picture wise, you're just help with EQIP, we help you implement small or like big conservation projects on your property that might not be the most viable to do just on your own.
So these then are like, so you're saying they're like more one-time projects, like you're putting in a fence or you're setting up a pollinator planting. Yep. It's not necessarily like you're locked into this kind of thing for the next 5 or 10 years.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And so you can span stuff out, but yeah, as soon as you complete a practice, you're not, there's a little bit of obligation to keep it that way for an X amount of years, but it's not like locked in where like CRP, it's protected for 15 years. Right. It's like a long-term contract. Ours, it's just like as soon as you complete it, you're done. And you don't really have to worry about it too much anymore. So it's pretty nice. There is some little bit of, not to get too much into detail, but there's some protection, but it's just more like mainly that you don't take your pollinator planting, do it, and then mow it all and turn it into a crop field. So, it's just a little bit of protection there is that it actually gets utilized for what it was intended. So, okay. But it's not anything like CRP where it's more rigid or strict.
So do these projects, like, is it something that the farmer or landowner comes up with and then takes to, the office and applies for that? Or is it something that like you kind of help them figure out, like, how does that work? Like say someone's kind of thinking about this EQIP program and they're not totally sure. What would you tell them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So generally what we would do is, a landowner will either like come into us or seek us or like call us and just say, hey, I'm curious, or like have like an idea of what they're thinking. And then we'll conduct like a site visit. So we'll go out on the property. And my main goal is just kind of like to bounce ideas off them and see what they like or what their goals are for the property. And then basically just try to help them achieve those goals. So it's not really, I don't like to try to like get people to just do stuff to do stuff. Like we want to work towards kind of their overall management goal. And so one thing we do is, that site visit, we'll kind of game plan, what are the goals of the property? What do you want to do? And then we can kind of talk about the different practices we could maybe do through EQIP to help with that. So for people who are interested or like don't necessarily know what they want to do, that works too. We can just walk the property and bounce ideas off each other and see what sounds feasible and what doesn't. And so that's kind of, it's a pretty open process where you can kind of do a lot of things, but then also there's some room for improvement or like not improvements, but room for creativity, I guess, or like doing different things in the planning process. So
okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So going off of that, then like who would you say like could be interested in applying to EQIP, or who should be interested in applying to EQIP? Like who is EQIP for, I guess?
Yeah. So EQIP is for, I think, any landowner who's just interested in conservation, which is pretty broad, but like I said, there's a lot of programs or practices we can do within it. So it's pretty nice in that sense where, if you're a cattle rancher, I mean, we have a lot of practices where we can help you implement cattle on the landscape. If you want to try rotational grazing, we can help do that. We have a lot of practices for cattle, but then also like if you're at a farmstead and you want to improve like your egg waste storage, we can also help with that.
Okay.
So there's that, and then there's the wildlife project side. And then also there's a whole bunch that we don't really use a ton of here because we don't have a ton of crops, but there's a bunch of like crop practices too for if you do have like traditional crop rotation and stuff, or if you want to implement a cover crop, or if you want to add another another species to your crop rotation, then
Mhm.
to help kind of protect them from pests, we can help with that too. So there's, or I say we, I don't know why I say we, I mean, EQIP can help with that.
Yeah.
But and so that's kind of the cool part is that there's a little bit of practices for everyone because I also forgot we can also help with, like timber stand improvement or harvesting trees.
Okay.
So
So a lot of forestry stuff too, which like maybe is
yeah,
like also really important in Aitkin County where it's yeah,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah,
Got
so we
it.
do get a lot of those too. And so it's a lot of, a little bit of everything. So I mean, I always think, it can't hurt, if you're thinking about or want to implement conservation on your property, just stop in and talk to us, and we can, if the program isn't for you, we can also just provide general technical assistance
Okay.
too. So it doesn't I mean, we work with programs, but we're not just bound by only helping people in our programs.
Yeah.
So if you're just curious about how to harvest trees on your property, you can stop in and we can provide you with lists of loggers or foresters in the area and stuff that kind of put you in the contact with the right people.
Okay. And when you say stop by real quick, where would that be?
Oh,
In in Aitkin County or like
yeah.
in your office?
So in Aiken County, we're located right across the parking lot from Tractor Supply, right off 169. Um, and but you can also, if you're listening in like a different area, you can find your local NRCS office online.
Okay.
So you go to the USDA website and they should have an NRCS like office located almost.
Okay.
And so most counties have one in Minnesota. There's a few counties that double up and cover two counties. In Aiken County, we just cover Aiken out of our office.
In Aitkin, yeah.
Yeah, so in Aiken, Minnesota. And so, but other counties sometimes will have two or multiple. But yeah, so there's a lot of offices though around the area. So a lot of people that can try to help.
Okay, great. And so just kind of last thing about this EQIP, like
Uh-huh.
say someone's interested in applying, they should just stop in. Is there anything they need to fill out online first? Like how long does the process
Yeah.
take? How, yeah.
Yeah, so the process is pretty quick. So the application is only 3 pages. And then all you really have to do is you can stop in the office and sign it. And that's usually kind of the best way is to
Okay.
stop in and sign it. Or if you um, call the office and then, you're interested in it. And I should say this, at least in our office, the best way is to just stop in or give us a call and we can then work with you on what you're thinking, talk about it some more, answer any questions you have, and then if you're still interested, we can then uh, meet you somewhere to sign the application, or you can just stop by the office.
Okay.
And so generally, we like to have like a little bit of a conversation before just signing the application, just to make sure what you're thinking of doing is applicable to EQIP. But we just have the application is really quick and easy. So it's really just kind of like I said, just kind of the government's way of throwing your name in a hat. So
Yeah, that makes
it's
sense. Yeah.
not too complicated. And then we'll a lot of the work is on us to kind of plan or help work with you to plan out what you want to do later and apply for funding.
Okay, great. Is there anything we didn't cover about EQIP, like last things? Or did we? Was it
Yeah,
good?
that's a pretty good kind of brief overview. The EQIP is a pretty good program, but I do want to say it is an application based program. So you are so what we do is after the application, we then plan out what you want to do, and then you kind of compete against other applications within the pool because we do have limited funds.
Right.
And I wouldn't say like necessarily like limited in amount, but like a finite amount of funds that we can allocate each year.
Right.
And so, um, uh, yeah, so we just then compete. We rank an application and then kind of that's how we determine who gets funding or not. And that ranking process is pretty similar is like kind of an area based process.
Okay.
So all of us in the same area are competing against other applications, but so it is competitive. So I just don't want to make it sound like a guarantee,
Hmm.
because it's, but it's worth it if you're interested to just throw your name in the hat and see what happens.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can cancel anytime too. So if it's something comes up later down the road, I should say you can cancel at any time prior to actually getting the funds.
Okay.
So like once you sign the contract that you're going to do it, it's a little bit harder to cancel. But
Mm-hmm.
up until that point, you can cancel at any time. And your NRCS employee or would walk you through that and make sure you know when you're approaching that point of
Right. Yeah.
it gets a little tougher to cancel.
Yeah. I guess once you've gotten paid, you can't really say like, oh no,
Yeah, right.
anymore.
Or
Yeah.
like you've signed saying, I do want to say that too. It is a contract. So with the government, so like if you do enroll in the program, you do sign like a contract saying you will do those things.
Yeah.
So there is some kind of like binding nature to the program, but so you can't just be like, oh, I just don't want to do it anymore. So if you do it, end up signing it, I would say that you would want to be passionate about it.
Okay.
So just as another kind of disclaimer or just like uh, warning almost,
Okay. Yeah.
but just as a heads up on that. But yeah, it's a like I said, I think it's a really good program. I like working with it.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's really cool. It's kind of there's a lot of different practices nowadays, and so it's really cool where you can uh, do a lot of stuff and help landowners kind of like achieve the land management goals they have. So I think that's kind of my favorite part
That's your
about
favorite
it.
part. Yeah.
Yeah, is that you can do a lot of stuff that they might not be able to do on their own, and you
Mm-hmm.
get to work with them and help plan it and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's what I enjoy.
And it's like a farm bill program, but it can cover like a lot of different land management. So a lot of
Yep.
different people can benefit from that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, a ton of people can benefit from it. And I mean, as long as you own land and have want to improve your conservation of that land,
Yeah.
then whether that be improving your water quality, soil health, wildlife habitat, forest stand, all that stuff we can help with, but also, with the main thing of providing a cost share to help
Right.
implement those practices.
So that's EQIP.
That's EQIP, yep, in a
Um,
nutshell.
okay, great. Thanks for that. But then your title is like Farm Bill Biologist with um, both kind of like NRCS and also Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Is that
Yes.
right? So, like, what else do you do besides dealing with EQIP and then coming onto this podcast to talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So the farm biologist is a grant funded position through Pheasants Forever. And so I work in partnership with the NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and then also um, the Soil and Water Conservation District. So I work with both of them, and I'm just like housed under Pheasants
Mm-hmm.
Forever. And so my main role is really just the way I kind of see it is to be a resource to the landowners in the area. So to provide, just general technical assistance for anyone who has wildlife or wants to manage their property for wildlife. And I kind of do that through NRCS programs, but also through kind of soil and water programs as well.
Okay.
So I kind of see it as like you're basically kind of like a matchmaker for a landowner and his property, where you're trying to find the program or trying to help the landowner in the best way you can through whether that's through programs or just writing a plan to help them achieve their goals. So sometimes I do that too, where a landowner is just interested in wildlife, and I'll
Yeah.
just go out and we just kind of bounce ideas out of each other and we'll write a plan. And sometimes they don't end up being in going into a program, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But what we do is, and we just give them the plan, and I'm there for any advice or implementing that plan. So I just kind of see myself as a resource to landowners. But the title farm bill biologist, I mean, I work under or work with farm bill programs a lot.
Okay.
So and then, but it's a big partnership position, and I also work with easements too. So that's through a state funded easements, and
Okay.
so they're just another form of protection that land protection that a landowner can use on their property
Okay.
or implement. So if that helps them achieve their goals, so
All right. Yeah.
but yeah, so I do a decent amount of stuff, and but it's a good variety.
What do you see when you go out and talk to people, both in terms of like what problems like people are trying to solve, and then also like
Mm,
what the level of interest is, if you're called out, and like how do you
yeah.
manage that, especially when you have like so many different options, from farm
hmm
bill to just private management plan to like full blown conservation easement.
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the main things that I kind of do in our office is I do a lot of our wildlife projects, but mainly in this area, we have sharp-tailed grouse.
Yeah.
And so that's a big portion of my work is just kind of handling those projects. And then so I do a lot of site visits for people who are interested in managing their property for sharp-tailed grouse.
Got it.
And so they're kind of a cool, they're a grassland grouse species. And so they're pretty cool where much like pheasants, they utilize the prairie, but then as kind of more habitat has been kind of growing up and grows old through succession, those areas aren't really usable anymore for sharp-tailed grouse. So I help, write management plans for those kind of brushland communities to help manage them for sharp-tailed grouse. So that's kind of the biggest one that I kind of deal with. There's a few other ones, like I'll do pollinator plantings too sometimes. So if people want to improve their property for their bees, if they have bees or just kind of pollinators in general. Mhm.
So you're saying that like a lot of times what'll happen is there'll be a succession from like grassland habitat to more brush or like maybe even forest habitat.
Yeah.
So what are you like when you go back and you manage for grouse? Like, what does that do? Like, what are you doing to the land?
Oh,
And also, like, what does that do for any other species that you know might be
yeah.
around?
Yeah. So you're exactly right. So basically, a lot of times, just natural succession is the grasses, and then the brush slowly invades, and that grows up bigger, and then kind of slowly turns into a forest. And so basically, what we're trying to do is through brush mowing, so taking like a skid steer with a big Fecon mulcher on the end or a circular disc, or like prescribed fire, we
Mm-hmm.
go out and then kind of manage that to kind of knock the brush back to kind of keep that area in a more open, grassier stage, kind of along that spectrum of succession. And so that's kind of the main thing that we do. For sharp-tailed grouse is just kind of stop succession or
Yeah.
knock it back into an earlier stage where it's more grassy and forby. They can utilize kind of that little bit in between in that brushier area too. So like when the brush starts to grow up a little bit, that's still good for them. But if you've got brush that's, 10, 15 feet tall, like borderline trees almost,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
when it kind of gets not as usable for grouse because they'll start blocking out kind of those grass component underneath. And then it's not as usable where they really need that grass and brush mixture for cover and
Mm-hmm.
nesting and brooding. But yeah, so that's kind of what we do in this area is mainly just brush mowing, prescribed fire. A lot of times we do, delayed haying too, where people just leave their hay until August, to allow any nesting birds to finish nesting and
Okay. Oh, because
then
they nest in
mow.
the hay, and then that way you let them
Yeah,
finish, and then you can.
then you can mow, and
Okay.
then it saves all the eggs, because once you mow them, they don't have any cover anymore, and the the bird will probably abandon the nest. But yeah, so those are kind of the general kind of three main ones we do for sharp-tailed grouse
Mm-hmm.
in the area. And the trick a lot of times too is you gotta kind of stay on it. But the first time is kind of always the worst, where it's like getting rid of that super tall stuff.
Yeah.
But after that, it gets a little more manageable, where you're only mowing down 2 or 3 foot tall brush.
Right.
That's kind of more wispy and not as sturdy. So I do think it's pretty nice if you just help them get that first cut done and open that area up, and then it's a little bit easier for the landowner to manage it themselves than with whatever equipment they have.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a recurring theme with all the stuff that we do, like in the district, and like that's what's great about conservation is that like
Mhm.
the first part is the hardest, and like
Yeah,
that's when the government, county or state or
yeah,
federal maybe is like here for some money and some equipment to help you with that. Then
yeah,
after that, once you get it going, then it's like a lot easier to manage yourself, right?
yeah, right. And that's what I think the cool part about like EQIP or is that it helps kind of get those initial startup costs out of the way to help you kind of get up and running before, so you can implement those again and again. And so it's not, it's not just like, we're not leaving you high and dry afterwards, but like it should be a little bit easier for you to kind of do it yourself then too.
Thank you for listening to the Aitkin Soil and Water Podcast. For more information on EQIP, visit the NRCS website at nrcs.usda.gov. And to learn more about the district's many services and programs, see the new Soil and Water website at aitkincountyswcd.org. All right, I guess that's it then. Thanks for coming on the pod. This is the first episode of the podcast, so you have that honor. One of many.
We're that badge probably.
Yeah, so. You should. Yeah, we'll make that.
Yeah. But no, thanks for having me. Appreciate the chance to talk about it and talk about our farm bill programs that
of course
some people might not know about.